that were out there. I think these included these three females and 3 males, but we caught additional ones as well. Here's the 6 animals, so all of them were recaptured in 2011. 1 female reproduced and raised kits through April. So it's hit or miss. Some years are better than others for these animals as far as reproduction. There's a lot of factors in what allows a kit to survive to adulthood, breeding age.
Is that a long time period to reaching breeding age?
I think they stay with the female two years, and then they're pretty much on their own.
Yeah, that would explain the alternate years.
Every year, yeah. And they didn't used to think there was a lot of teaching, but they've done some research on the kits and what the parents will teach the kits as far as survival and, on the ropes and stuff, and it's 2 years, and they'll teach them a lot in that time. So here's the wolverine data that we collected, 2010, 2011. These are all different females and males, different colors. As you can see, these dots represent their tracks from the GPS collar. And unlike the snowmobile, we didn't have a line. We had reports on the GPS units. And that green, this green individual, that's a lot of country to cover,
Rob, those aren't the satellite GPS collars, right? You have to go out and collect the collar in order to get those points off?
No, these...
Or they are sending the data back?
Yeah, I believe even at the beginning of this project where the technology was advanced enough that we get reports.
So those are very expensive collars, huh?
Yep, that's what I'm saying. As long as we get a lot of cooperators with money, we can get some really good data, but if things start drying up, some data is better than none, but more data is better than a little. So more data you have, the better. So this is kind of the 2 years that we started really seriously collecting data on the wolverines. And this is just an example of one of those individuals, and this verifies the model that Copeland and Lagoon developed was untested. It wasn't ground truth. Once we started this intensive monitoring, it ground truthed the predictability of this persistent snow layer, or persistent snow model. So you can see that it's a very good predictor of where the habitat is. This light blue is the persistent snow. So that's another plus. You get all these little pluses off to the side when you do a project like this. Oops. I keep hitting that roller and it switches. So off of all those points, we established home ranges for the males and the females. And you can see this is, I think these were the original study areas that we were looking at earlier, and these were the actual home ranges of these individuals. That's a lot of wolverine activity compared to what I thought we would find. So, winter season NPC estimates, and I don't know, I forget what NPC stands for. The gist of it is, though, the area that is covered in square miles, and you can see this one male, 500 plus square miles, falls in with the established home range size that's on the high end of the bracket that the males will go. Some of these males had some pretty small ones, 170. This means they met their needs with the ground that they were covering. Some of the females, I think it goes to 300. You can see that we've got good habitat here based on these square mile home range sizes. females again, and males. Oops. You can see Lucy is the one I was talking about. Your winter before this one, I went out and processed Lucy in the trap. Very old female, missing one finger on one toe on the forefoot, probably due to a trap or something. Her teeth were just amazingly banged up, and she was missing them. They were worn down, but she was in good shape, so she was still meeting her needs, and she was pretty feisty in the trap. So this is Lucy. The yellow is the home range for Lucy in 2011, and it's based on the point counts. The larger circles are more point counts where she spent more time. Smaller the points, the less time she spent. So she, out on the edge of her range, she didn't spend much time. But there's certain areas where she was really doing pretty well for food and cover and stuff. Here's another one. This is Jenny, F4, and Lucy. I think Jenny might have been an offspring, but then I don't know the ins and outs of the specific animals as well as some of the other people that were working on this project too.
Just looking at those points and the proximity to human activity, not counting backcountry rec, it looks like they're coming fairly close to developed areas,
Yeah.
right?
Amazing we found, and we don't have enough data yet, but what the data is showing so far is we're like this,
Mm-hmm.
which says a lot for this animal being able to persist with all that human activity.
Adaptability.
And this is, let's see, we got,
Tolerate us is what it says.
What's that?
It says a lot that they're able to tolerate us as
Yeah.
well as they do.
yeah. So the two pink home ranges are females, and the two green ones are two different males. There's four animals with coincident home ranges. They are territorial, but you can see they can avoid each other in these vast amount of areas. So kind of nested on each other there. There's a couple more. Lily and Larry and yeah, that's the more, well, I won't say anything. Giving names to animals that you're researching is, it's getting more popular nowadays, but,
Not quite as scientific.
well, it is scientific because they've got a number,
Right.
F4,
You're
F3.
getting a little too personal.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, these people have a lot of invested in this, and
That's true.
some of the people that were doing this are very passionate about wolverines, so I have no problem with that. So here's the answer to the question that you were mentioning just a minute ago. Here's some of the home ranges, and the white, the black squiggly lines, I think are accumulated for that season, 2011, the sewing machine winter rec use. You can see it's pretty coincident, especially right in this area here. I mean, you got home ranges laid right over the activity areas, so, which kind of surprised me, but it just says they're very adaptable. So what we kind of concluded with this limited data was that it really didn't appear to have much effect on wolverine activities with the data that we got now. I've got some slides on, we saw the slides, the times of days that the winter recreationists go out. And I also have time of day, since the GPS collars log that time of day that the wolverines are out and moving about. So we'll see how that matches up. But it's kind of surprising. I mean, we've got 2 home ranges right there. Now, is that habituation? Could be. They get used to people zooming by on snow machines. And as long as people stay on the trails, I don't see that as a big problem. It's the high markers that might cause problems. Snowmobiling over dens. That causes more risk to the kits because the female has an urge to move them. And something's happening right above you, move them to a different den. That exposes them to predators and the weather extremes that come in here. So. See, this is the key. We don't know. We don't have enough data. So I'm hesitant. I always put that caveat in there that we don't have enough data to say, oh yeah, snow machine is no problem, or winter wreck is no problem. And that's why I hope this project keeps going. I mean, I think it's worth the money, both for wildlife management as well as the interests of the snowmobile associations in the West. So we need to look at more animals to add to our data that we already have. And some of the questions, do the animals avoid certain areas? Do they avoid certain times of day? Or do they avoid certain days? I mean, you saw the breakdown of the days. Maybe they get quiet during the weekend. Because people, it's amazing that as the assumption that these animals are habituated in the areas where you got a lot of overlay with winter wreck, and the habituation that we're creating by trapping and collaring them, because they get used to seeing humans a lot more than they usually do. I'm surprised that people don't see them more out recreating. It would seem the reason that you'd see them more since they're being more habituated, but they're still very elusive. So. So these are the wolverine movements as it associates to, some of these slides will associate it to winter wreck use, time of day, days, stuff like that. These are different individuals. You can see some of them move quite a bit, meters per hour. And females don't usually use, as predicted by the home range, they don't usually move as far or as much as the males. And this is the movement rate in meters per hour, time of day. So dawn, but here again, in the middle of the day, the males seem to be moving quite a bit during the time that the snowmobilers are out in force. They aren't necessarily nocturnal, but they will be out early dusk, early dawn to early dusk, but I don't think they're considered nocturnal. Now denning, it's hit or miss. This female in 2001 had the den fail, and that you kind of determine that by their movements. If the den fails, she goes back out. Too late to breed again, but she's got to go out and feed herself.
What does fail mean? She did not have a kit?
She had kits, but either they died or she didn't. What failed is that she had kits and they didn't make it to adulthood.
Rob, do the males participate? They bring food to the den, or once the breeding season's over, it's all on the female?
Yeah, they're not obligated to bring food. I think sometimes they may, but it's pretty much up to the female. And that's why den location is very important. If you get one of those really good habitat areas where she can support herself, she knows it's a good place for a den. The research I mentioned earlier about how long the kids stay with the adults, the males surprisingly were really involved after the year, after they emerged from the den, in training them as well as the female. That was kind of a surprise, but the males have a lot to do with that. So on this female in 2010, she moved a den. Some kind of threat must have occurred, so she picked up her kits and moved it to another den. And the more they do this, the more they're at risk, and the more chance of failure for the den. I'm not sure we have any data on this one. This one moved the den 2 times, which increases the risk. And these 3 females were not known to den in 2011, these 3 here. But it all depends on how much data we get. Like, if they slip a collar or for some reason the collar dies, it's an expensive loss for us. So what does it all mean? Too soon to say. So that's the caveat. The project wants to emphasize the more data we have, the better we can say how this affects the wolverine. But we do have some pretty good data. So excellent information on recreation as well as wolverine movements. We lost some information in 2011 due to the collar failures, and yeah, that's tough to build something that can keep working that's based on GPS, and satellite communication and stuff. So hopefully that doesn't occur too often because it's costly when it does. So the spatial overlap of wolverines and rec at home range and regional scales was surprising. You see the coincidence here. And on the previous home range and recreation use slide. And the diversity of the recreation intensity across the study area. That's the yellow there. Boy, I keep hitting that. Roll that. So I think we got, in those 2 years, we got some really good data. And I think with the continued trapping we've added to this, both with the camera traps and the collaring. Hope we can keep going with that. Sample size, that's the data I'm talking about. Bigger sample size, the more you can predict accurately. New study areas, Trinity Mountains. Now this consortium, Round River, I haven't not heard of them expanding beyond R3/4s as far as the study goes. But since they were so successful on these 3/4s, especially the Payette, the Sawtooth, they were kind of disappointed. They weren't getting much activity or results from their traps and stuff. But they still got some really good data. I think some of the other hot spots in the west where you have wolverines and a lot of recreation activity, you might go like other forests, other areas. And there again, this was turned out to be very successful. The cooperation between our community and the businesses and the recreators that support this community. We got some really good data on the recreational use. So that's all I have. Thanks. Any questions? I'll try and answer them. I don't know. It's like the MPC. I don't know. Get what that.
Is there an opportunity to get involved in a volunteer area?
Yeah, actually, Round River Conservancy